on YouTube now. It says preparing to live stream, and looks like it's taking a little bit of time. Okay. All right, very good. Okay, so we are live on YouTube and we have our audience here, and I'm going to share my screen now and we'll get started. Okay. And I'm calling these the Fabulous Four. And the reason I'm calling it the Fabulous Four, magnesium, omega-3s, iodine, and vitamin D, is not necessarily because you have to take all these as supplements, because you'll see that I think these represent a real opportunity to broaden your overall dietary menu. You know, all of these things are going to prompt you, I hope, my intention is to be able to broaden the types of foods that you eat so that you don't have to supplement. Of course, there's certain situations that we'll talk about where supplementation is probably going to be necessary, but I think these four, understanding them very, very deeply, is going to give you a really integrated view of human health, in addition to presenting an opportunity to see if you can get these from a dietary or lifestyle perspective. So we're going to start with magnesium and end with vitamin D. We've certainly spoken about magnesium before, and we've certainly spoken about omega-3s. We haven't spent a whole lot of time with iodine in previous classes. We've certainly spoken about vitamin D, but in this case, we're going to be talking more specifically in detail about how to supplement, how to get blood tests, how to, when you should check it and when you should recheck it, these sorts of things. So let's start with magnesium. And let me close a few of these things down. And we're going to go through the basics, where magnesium deficiency is found, causes of low magnesium, how to test for it, how to supplement it, foods with high magnesium, and time expectations in terms of when you should retest. So magnesium, which all of you probably know, is a mineral. Most of it's actually found in the bone. It's part of the bone matrix and is very important that in bone health, in addition to being a mineral and a cofactor for hundreds of enzymes. And these enzymes, which are present in all over the body, are there to be able to make sure the natural metabolism, the natural functioning of the body is happening properly. And so magnesium is really critical there. And half of the adult population has insufficient intake. Now, I put here that 1% of the magnesium is in your blood. And one of the reasons I highlight that as something is because your blood is going to make sure, your body is going to make sure that the magnesium in your blood is very, very tightly controlled, super controlled, because if it goes up or goes down, all kinds of problems can happen. Things like heart arrhythmias, which can cause death. In fact, can happen if the blood level is off. And if it's only 1% of the magnesium in your blood, of the magnesium that you have in your body, in your blood, that means that testing your blood for magnesium, testing just what's in the serum, is not going to be an effective way to determine whether or not your magnesium is at a proper level, because your body is going to do everything it can in its power, including robbing the bone of magnesium as well as calcium. Calcium is another one of those things that your body is going to spend a whole lot of time trying to make sure it's in a very narrow level in your blood, because if it's not, all kinds of horrible things can happen. So your body is going to rob your bones of magnesium and calcium if your total body level of magnesium and calcium is off. That means that we'll get down to how we test this. You'll understand that a little bit more, but I'll just mention it now because we're talking about it. Your magnesium, to test whether or not it's good in your body, actually has to be tested in the cell, inside the cell. And this is not regulated as tightly as the blood, and therefore gives you a better estimate of what your magnesium level is. Now, in one of the episodes, we spoke about micronutrient testing, and we went over that. So if you're interested in micronutrient testing, it's going to be coming up pretty often in tonight's talk. Then definitely watch that episode. I don't remember which episode it was, but all the episodes are on YouTube, and you could search for the micronutrient in the search box on my YouTube page. So magnesium deficiency is found in, and it is also a sign of a whole host of things. And when you get these wrong, in addition to the fact that we spoke about how it's, used in maintaining this narrow level in your blood, when your levels are low, you are at an increased risk of high blood pressure, vascular calcification, just overall risk for cardiovascular disease, atrial fibrillation, so that's an arrhythmia of the heart, and congestive heart failure as well. They showed that people with congestive heart failure with low levels had more severity to their congestive heart failure. It's also important for diabetes and metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome being that sort of combination of obesity and high triglycerides and diabetes. People who had high magnesium, normal levels, higher levels, were 1/3 less likely to have metabolic syndrome. Historically, it was used for migraines, where they would sometimes give IV magnesium to get rid of migraines. Of course, osteoporosis, we spoke about it being important in the bones. Constipation, because it's involved in muscle relaxation. Muscle cramps and spasms. So if you're getting, especially in the legs, if you're getting the muscle cramps and spasms, it's very important to test your magnesium. Again, not just if you go to your doctor and just say, can I get a magnesium test? They're just going to get a serum magnesium. That's not going to tell you if you have low magnesium. You need to get what's called an RBC magnesium. Memory can be deficient, and also sarcopenia, which is that decrease in muscle mass as you get older that is associated with shortened life, as well as an inability to carry on daily life activities as you get older. And it's very important that we preserve muscle mass as much as we can. In fact, I would say, and a lot of anti-aging specialists will agree with me, that one of the greatest challenges for anyone as they get into their 60s and above is to make sure that they don't lose muscle mass. Now, muscle mass is a natural feature of aging, but whatever you can do to keep muscle mass, which includes obviously making sure that you are eating proper amounts of protein. We spoke about that last week, but also doing resistance exercises, and also making sure things like vitamin D and magnesium are optimized, because both of those are associated with increasing sarcopenia, penia meaning less, sarco meaning muscle. So it's decreased muscle. And I'll just mention one other thing, that if you don't use your muscle, the muscle basically turns to fat. And when it turns to fat, unfortunately, what happens is that your muscles need more energy than your fat. It's sort of like slower, it's not as active metabolically. The cells aren't as active metabolically, which basically means that even though you look exactly the same, because the fat, the muscles are just turning into fat, but you kind of look the same, your calorie requirement actually decreases, because the muscle required more calories than the fat. And therefore, at the same level of calories, even the same level of calories that you continue to eat, because muscle's turning into fat and doesn't need as many calories, then that same level that didn't cause weight gain is now excess calories, because the fat doesn't need as much. And therefore, the same amount of calories that you've always been eating, if you're not doing resistance training and trying to get those muscles in shape, is going to cause slow weight gain, which could be, it could be a half pound a year, but it could be a pound a year, something small like that. And that is still going to significantly increase the risk over 10, 15 years of all kinds of metabolic problems because of that fat, because of that increased fat that is just because you are not preserving the muscle mass. So what are the causes of low magnesium? Water filtration. So it used to be, if you drank from a stream, you would get magnesium, but basically pretty much all kinds of, it's filtered out of water systems. nutrient poor soils, but organic farms do have higher levels. And then poor absorption. Things like acid blocking drugs like Prilosec and Nexium and Prevacid, all those are going to decrease your magnesium. Phytates, which are found in grains, beans, and nuts. But honestly, grains, beans, and nuts naturally have higher levels of magnesium in them. And therefore, it's important that these get prepared properly. And we did a video, one of the episodes on traditional methods of preparation, which reduce these phytates, which basically bind the magnesium and the zinc that's found in these things. And by soaking or sprouting or fermenting, these sorts of methods, traditional methods, you can get rid of these, or at least reduce the phytates and still include beans and nuts because they do have high levels of magnesium. Loss in the urine, if you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes and the blood sugar is up, it's going to increase the amount of magnesium that gets lost in the urine. So additionally, if you have higher levels of magnesium, you also get better blood sugar control. And high zinc supplementation. I've spoken about this before, only in the sense of a lot of people are over supplementing with zinc these days because, well, COVID is, one of the recommendations for COVID prevention as well as COVID treatment is zinc supplementation. Now for COVID prevention, or just, having an optimal level of zinc in your bloodstream, you really only need 15 to 25 milligrams of zinc. And there are a lot of supplements out there, including from companies that I highly respect, but find troubling that they have supplementation of 50 milligrams, which is too high and can affect copper levels. Now, high levels of zinc can also be a cause of low magnesium. Now, just as an aside, when I do recommend that everyone out there who's listening buy zinc lozenges just to have in case you feel like you're coming down with COVID. And I stocked up early and I bought it for all my family members just to have in case. And the one I recommend is from Life Extension Foundation. It's this very specific zinc lozenge. And if you're getting symptoms of it, then you take high zinc. But which is basically the zinc lozenge, every few hours, really, in the very beginning, which can kind of halt the viral replication that's happening. So, but when it comes to regular zinc supplementation, no more than 15 to 25 milligrams is enough. So how do you test? Well, we spoke about it. You need to get an RBC magnesium. And I'll say it probably 5 times during this episode. You can get this on your own. There are labs now that you can just go in and order your own blood tests. Because quite frankly, a lot of your doctors are not even aware that there is such a test as an RBC magnesium, honestly. And if you ask them to order magnesium, they'll just get the serum magnesium, which we already spoke about, is not going to tell you what you need to know about magnesium. So don't be afraid to get your own blood tests. If you are in Florida or California or New York, where I have a medical license, I'll order it for you. If you don't want to, just contact me after the class, and I'd be happy to order that for you. And but honestly, don't be scared to order it on your own. There are labs out there, one that have franchises. One's called Any Labs Now. There are a whole host of them that you can just literally walk in and order your own blood test. There are unusual rules in New York. Check your local laws, but almost everywhere in the United States, you can just go in and order your own blood test. Now, how do you supplement? Well, you look for a supplement with multiple forms of magnesium. There's magnesium glycate and magnesium oxide and magnesium malate, but you want to look for a supplement that has multiple forms of magnesium. Now, 350 milligrams is what is known as a tolerable upper limit. Anything above that level can cause diarrhea. People with kidney disease and elderly people who have naturally reduced kidney function should opt on lower doses. But I do believe that everyone should probably be taking some form of magnesium. Now, it could be in your multivitamin, and then you could be including foods with high magnesium, which we'll go into next. But you'll see a lot of 500 milligram doses out there, and that's totally fine. But just be aware that it can cause some diarrhea or loose stools. You have to really find a dose that works for you and try to incorporate some foods that have magnesium in them. So what are those foods? Well, my favorite is the first one, which is dark chocolate. Now, dark chocolate and 1 ounce has 64 milligrams. I put a few of these in here just to show you that it can be difficult to get high doses. Obviously, leafy greens, or preferably organic leafy greens, 1 cup is going to be 157 milligrams. When it comes to dark chocolate, I prefer cacao nibs because unfortunately, eating a lot of dark chocolate, first of all, you want to make sure it's not loaded with sugar. So that means 85% and up, which can be very bitter for people. Or you get a little bit of cacao powder, and you can make hot chocolate with it with a little stevia or something like that to sweeten it. Or what I like to do is use cacao nibs. And cacao nibs, which are the little like seeds kind of the chocolate. I put 2 heaping tablespoons of that into a morning smoothie, blend it up. But you could also put it into your oatmeal if you cook your oatmeal. And the advantage to cacao nibs is that, unfortunately, if you take a lot of dark chocolate, you can get a lot of cadmium, which is a heavy metal. But the cacao nibs are reasonably low in cadmium if you're going to be eating a lot of dark chocolate. I happen to like those cacao nibs and do eat a lot of them. And I do like chocolate. I mean, who doesn't? And I think between that and, of course, the avocados and the serving of nuts and seeds, and I eat almost all 3 of these every day. I take a multivitamin, and I honestly think between the multivitamin and all the cacao nibs that I eat, that's probably the reason why my magnesium level was normal. Whole grains can give you some. Fatty fish, a little bit. Again, we're trying to get around 350 to 400 to 400, 400 or 500. So obviously it's going to be somewhat difficult. Again, if you're eating huge salad, smoothie with maybe some avocado on the salad, handful of nuts and seeds during the day, you're going to be just fine. Especially if you're getting a little bit in a multivitamin. And we spoke about a multivitamin a couple weeks ago, so check out that video if you didn't watch that. Time expectation, it can take a year or more to get to higher levels. So don't check it a month later if it's low. Check it every 3, 4, 5 months and give it some time. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there are people, although I haven't found any studies to back this up, that say that you can absorb magnesium from an Epsom salt bath. And I do take Epsom salt baths, and because it's magnesium sulfate that Epsom salts are, and therefore when you dissolve it in water, people feel like you can absorb it into your body. There are also magnesium oils that are basically magnesium. I don't know what form of magnesium it's in. I guess it's like a magnesium sulfate dissolved into water, very, very high concentration that you can then rub onto your skin. It's not actually oil, but because it's so concentrated with magnesium, when you put it on, it kind of feels that way. And I've experimented with that as well. That's one thing that you could also try. And there's certainly going to get benefits from everything that I've been discussing overall. Your life is just better with a little dark chocolate and avocados and nuts and seeds and leafy greens. If you are including those, your health overall is going to improve. And if you add to that a nice bath, Epsom salt bath later in the evening to relax, I mean, come on, this is going to improve your health overall, and you probably are going to be fine when it comes to magnesium. My goal in discussing magnesium in that way is that for people who for a lot of people, they're going to need to take some supplemental magnesium if they're not going to do everything that I discussed. And I urge everyone to try to get that blood test. But if you don't get the blood test, just follow everything that we have just been talking about. I see there's a question that's coming in. Sharon's asking which multivitamin I take. I take a vitamin from, I'm reluctant to share only because I've looked at so many and it fits me. It fits me perfectly for what I need, but for someone else, it might not be ideal. It's the one that I take is from Dr. Joel Furman. He made a formulation and I happen to like the ingredients in it, as opposed to, I often take a lot of the supplements I take are from Life Extension Foundation. The multivitamin that they have there, I believe, had just too high ingredients of certain too high ingredients for certain things. But honestly, I would watch the multivitamin talk that I gave, and that would really allow you to try to figure out what you need for yourself. Okay, so let's go to omega-3s, which is the next thing that we want to go through. And again, if anyone has any questions, please do let me know. All right, so where is it found? Well, it's found in fish or plant sources. Now, in fish, we all know that fish is high in omega-3s. So what's it? Well, let's go into what it's good for. Well, it's good for your blood pressure. It's good for triglycerides. For people who have autoimmune disease, as we spoke about in the autoimmune disease episode, it's great for rheumatoid arthritis, and I give it to patients with psoriasis and lupus as well. It can be very good for mood and depression, and is also preventative for cognitive decline. Unfortunately, you can't really, because of mercury, unless you're eating very, very small fish like sardines, you're not going to be able to eat fish every single day. And therefore, you may or may not be getting enough omega-3s. If you're vegan, there's an additional issue. Now, there's something called short chain and long chain fatty acid, basically. A short chain is found in plant sources. So this is what's called alpha linolenic acid. And what happens is when you eat flax, chia, hemp, or walnuts, what happens is your body needs to make it, it's a small chain. Think of a small chain, but your brain, as an example, needs a long chain. Now, the short chain is found in these plants. And what your body does is it lengthens the chain so that it can be incorporated into your brain, as an example. Now, a lot of people are lacking in the enzyme that they just have a genetic variation that prevents them from efficiently converting these into the long chains, which are naturally found in fish. So this is the issue. If you're vegan and you have that genetic variation, it can be very difficult for you to get levels high enough that are going to be beneficial to prevent cognitive decline and mood and depressive issues. Now, there's been a lot of controversy in the vegan community about whether or not you should be supplementing with the long chain supplement, which is called DHA. There's two of them, EPA and DHA. And there's a lot of debate there, but I think the data clearly shows that if you're vegan and you don't know your genetic variation and you get an omega index test, which is going to tell you the percentage of omega-3 that you have in your blood cells. Again, this is also an intracellular test, just like the magnesium. And so some people are going to be deficient. So it may be beneficial for people to supplement with a little bit of omega-3. Now I put here fish high in omega-3 is also high in magnesium, and you'll see as we get into iodine that there's a link with fish as well, and it is probably one of the reasons why a lot of people think that a little bit of fish and a mostly vegetarian diet with a little bit of fish is probably, one of the best ways of eating. Okay. So get an omega index and see how you're doing. Now, the issue here is a lot of people are eating. There's omega 3s and there's omega 6s. There are other omegas, but traditionally speaking, it used to be that the omega 3 to 6 ratio was very different many years ago. In other words, there weren't people eating as many omega 6 fats as there are today. Today, because of all the processed oils like corn, sunflower, safflower, canola. Well, canola also has some omega 3, but all of these seed oils that, anytime you go out to dinner, who knows what kind of oils they're using in their cooking, but most likely it's some kind of omega 6 oil. And as a result of that, the ratio is all messed up, and that is going to lead to the ratio being messed up. And that could be resolved by determining what your omega index is. And if it is low, then that would be perhaps a good idea for you to consider supplementing with omega 3s. Just so you know, obviously, you want to eat fish that are low in mercury. We've spoken about mercury a couple episodes, but the mnemonic that people use is SMASH, salmon, mackerel. So S is salmon, M is mackerel, A is anchovies, SMASH. S is sardines, and H is herring. So those are the ones that are low in mercury. So keep that in mind. And you can get an omega 3, an omega index test by mail, and you just stick your finger and you blot it with a paper, and then you send it in. So you can do this on your own as well. You can probably order it off of Amazon. Okay, now let's get into iodine. And I might add that, everything I'm discussing, you should talk to your doctor. I don't know, as an example with magnesium, if you have reduced kidney function or you don't know your kidney function, you shouldn't just go crazy with supplementing magnesium. That could be dangerous. Likewise, omega 3 can thin your blood. Maybe if you're on blood thinners or something like that, you should, again, no one should jump into these. You should have some idea about what your kidney function is and whether there are medications that could be an issue. And the same thing goes with iodine. Iodine, if you're being treated for thyroid disease already, or maybe you don't know your thyroid status, that's really what you need to check and know before anything, because iodine even at medium doses, if you've been chronically low for the last 10 years, and then all of a sudden you flood your system with iodine, that can be not a very safe situation. It can be dangerous, in fact. So what's the history here? It used to be a huge health problem. People used to walk around with huge goiters up until the 1920s. It was very common for people to be walking around with goiters. So what did they do? They added it to salt. And therefore, people got iodine, and then the goiters went away, but salt consumption rose. But now people are cutting back, and low iodine is an issue, potential issue now. Not all salt companies add it anymore. And if you get sea salt or pink salt or any of these sort of Celtic salt, most of these, they might have trace amounts of iodine in them, but they're not enriched with iodine. And therefore, if you're not getting iodine from another source, then you could be dealing with an iron deficiency disorder. And low iodine, there are these deficiency disorders, which are basically characterized as low iodine without any thyroid lab abnormality, and can be linked to obesity and psychiatric issues, and paradoxically can cause hyperthyroidism. And this can happen quickly if all of a sudden you have been low thyroid and low iodine, because what happens is, as someone gets, if someone is chronically has low thyroid, what can happen is they can form these little nodules in their thyroid, which when then given iodine, just go nuts and start releasing too much thyroid hormone. So, so it's just, as again, it's something to be aware of. Impacts breast health. Well, what are the signs of low thyroid? Feeling cold, fatigue, edema, constipation. Can't lose weight. These are all, dry skin, thinning hair, or additional signs. And what are the tests for thyroid? So the tests for thyroid, and you want to get all of these tests, and we'll go to the other ones. You want to get, a lot of doctors just screen for TSH. If you have any feeling as we're going through this that you could potentially be have low thyroid or low iodine causing low thyroid, then you want to make sure that all of these tests are tested. TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and thyroid antibodies. A lot of women there are a lot of people with thyroid antibodies and who have Hashimoto's out there. So it is part of getting a test. Unfortunately, a lot of doctors will just screen and get a TSH and not get any of these. And maybe as a screening tool, perhaps it's fine. But if you feel like you have those symptoms that I just spoke about, then you don't want to just be screened by getting a TSH. You want to make sure that you get all of these tests. Okay, so what are the questions to ask yourself? Well, I already mentioned, you use, you're not hardly using any salt, or you're using Celtic pink or kosher salt. None of these are enriched with iodine. So you could be not getting that. And who knows about restaurants who, of course, they're using a ton of salt, but are they using iodized salt? Again, it's first of all, it's not that stable in the salt, as I've read. So you don't really know how much iodine you're getting, or if it's still in the salt. If you're mostly vegetarian, that can be an issue. And if you sweat a lot, you could be losing some iodine as well. Not that you shouldn't, of course, you should continue to exercise, but these are questions to ask in the context of iodine deficiency. So low intake, obviously, is the cause of low iodine, but also perchlorate, which was originally formulated as a rocket fuel, unfortunately is found all throughout the environment and causes low iodine as well. All right, so where is it found? So interestingly, we spoke about omega-3s. In this case, when we get to vitamin D, you'll see fish that the fish high in omega-3s also have some vitamin D. In this case, fish high in iodine are usually low in omega-3s. In this case, a fish like cod actually has a decent amount of iodine in it. So if you're eating cod on a fairly regular basis, it's a great fish, and it has a decent amount of iodine. Seaweed, of course, is a #1 source in terms of concentration. And Japanese iodine consumption is 5,000 to 13,000 micrograms per day. Now, most multivitamins have 150 micrograms. And really, that's really all you need to prevent goiter. And also, I believe that if you're getting 150, which I do recommend should be in your multivitamin, and you're eating some fish and maybe a little bit of seaweed, then you're going to be fine and you don't need supplemental iodine. I happen to eat cod probably once a week. I will be talking about seaweed in a couple weeks because there's certain additional benefits to it. But honestly, those seaweed snacks, the nori sheets, are very, very popular. You're going to get iodine from that as well. And this dosing that they get is unbelievably high and is thought to be related to the 1/3 rate of breast cancer in Japanese women. But certainly it is way too high for anyone who throughout their life has not been eating that. Again, this is 5,000 to 13,000 micrograms, and all you need is 150 micrograms. Kombu is a type of seaweed that is very popular in Japanese cooking and makes something called dashi. and which is the most delicious broth that is on earth, if you ask me. And you can, it has a natural form of glutamate in it. And glutamate creates that sensation of umami. We spoke about that in one of the other episodes, which is the savory flavoring of food that can also be found in things like anchovies and Parmesan cheese. But this feeling, this savory sensation is delicious. And one sheet, and a lot of people will often, even non-Japanese, will take one sheet of kombu and just put it into any sort of stock. And because of the natural glutamate, you get this increased savory taste, which when I think about it, my mouth waters. But basically, one sheet contains 3,000 micrograms. Dairy, you also find it levels vary widely. Eggs, one egg yolk has 24 micrograms. Again, we're looking for 150 micrograms per day. Prunes, 5 prunes have 13 micrograms, not a lot. And I wouldn't want to suddenly eat 5 prunes for obvious reasons. And lima beans, 16 micrograms. So if you're getting, cod has a decent amount. I should have written that in there. I looked it up, but I unfortunately don't remember the level, but you can get a little bit in cod. So my recommendation is make sure you're getting 150 micrograms. Maybe it's from diet, but I recommend it in a multivitamin. You should get 150 micrograms. And if you need to take extra, then you look for kelp tablets and look for the microgram dose. So as I've already said, most multivitamins have 150 micrograms per day. Check your multivitamin. And despite the intakes of the Japanese, the tolerable upper intake level has been assigned at 1,100 micrograms. So I certainly wouldn't exceed that, and I probably wouldn't exceed 400 either. Pat's asking if kombu is related to kombucha. No, it's not. But it's the name is similar though. But okay. Next. Originally, it may have been, but the kombucha that we sell in the United States is definitely not related to it, for sure. Okay, so we spoke about the tests. We spoke about causes. Okay, we covered iodine. So hopefully that answers a lot of your questions. You definitely need to make sure you're getting enough. You cannot rely on just your standard American diet. For sure, you cannot rely on that. Okay, so Pat, by the way, kombucha, cha means tea in Japanese. So it may have been that they had a kombucha, like a seaweed tea, but not the US version for sure. Okay. All right, so vitamin D. Now we've spoken about vitamin D before, and that's how we're going to end tonight's episode 36. And we already probably know a lot of this. First of all, you can get it from sunlight, but unfortunately, it's not that effective in older people. As you get older, the ability of your skin to be part of the multi-step process that makes vitamin D in your body is not that efficient. And honestly, it's not even that reliable in the young. They did a study of Hawaiian surfers that showed that a lot of them were vitamin D deficient. So what are the foods with vitamin D? Well, as I spoke about, though the fish with good levels of omega-3 also have good amount of vitamin D. Now, in context, we spoke about 150 micrograms per day minimum for iodine, and we're going to really need, somewhere on the order of 3,000 IUs per day of vitamin D, and that's going to immediately, if you look at these numbers, make you question whether it's possible of getting My father, who happens to be watching, is also a physician, looked up the amount of iodine in 3 ounces of cod, and it's 63 to 99 micrograms of iodine. So as you can see, that just, a good serving of cod is going to really get you very close to what you need. And if you're using a little bit of iodized salt with that, then you're probably going to be fine. Plus a multivitamin, and you're going to be good. So thank you for that, Dad. Okay, so as you can see, we're probably going to look for around 3,000, 4,000 micro IUs per day of vitamin D, and salmon 988, herring 216, sardines 1 can 177. So as you're seeing here, it's probably not the best. It's going to be very difficult to get vitamin D from your diet, and and it's not going to be reliable from the sun. And a lot of us, quite frankly, have gotten too much sun already. And so it's probably not going to be good for our overall health to be relying on sun and supplementation and food. So why do we even care? Well, lower vitamin D is associated with overall greater inflammation in your body. And quite frankly, vitamin D is really not even a vitamin. It's more of like a hormone, because it acts like a hormone, which means that it's used as sort of a signaling molecule, like hormones are used as signaling molecules. And if you have greater inflammation in your body, that's going to raise your risk for a whole host of conditions like heart disease and greater risk for weight gain, autoimmune disease, a whole host of things associated with higher blood sugar, associated with weight gain. And all of these diseases, osteoporosis, obviously, is because vitamin D is essentially, is allowing us to absorb calcium into our bloodstream. That's basically, it's one of its main functions. So it's going to affect osteoporosis, your mineralization of your bone. But if your levels are low, cancer patients are often found to have lower levels of vitamin D. Those with periodontal disease, also higher levels of autoimmune disease, and also depression and seasonal affective disorder. So people get, who basically get sad and depressed when in the winter, and they have these lights that will, that you can get to help with that. But you also want to make sure that your vitamin D levels are in a good place. So how are you going to take it? Well, first of all, you need to make sure it's a gel cap only, because if you buy the dry tablets, you're not going to absorb them as much. And I speak from experience on that. This is sort of well known. I didn't know until it happened to me, but I was taking I was taking 5,000 or 10,000 IUs because my level was low, and I was taking the dry tablets, and I was taking that for 3 months, and my level went up like three or 4 points only. When I checked it. And then I switched to just using myself as an example to 5,000 IUs of a gel cap. And 3 months later, it went up to a good level. So you want to take D3. There is a prescription D2, but really you want D3. That's the active form. Honestly, the only reason that I can tell that doctors prescribe the D2 prescription is because it's a prescription and they can write it as a prescription. There's no other reason. It's not as good. It's not as well absorbed, and D3 is over the counter, and you want to get a gel cap of vitamin D3, and you want to check your level. So how do you test? Well, you get a blood test, and that one you can ask your doctor for. Hopefully he'll do it, but you can always, hopefully is probably the 4th or 5th time said, don't be afraid to order your own blood test. Get a blood test and aim for, above 50 is what you want. And if it's low and you start taking, 5,000 IUs a day, then wait 3 months before you rechecked, and then you can adjust. You can go up, you can go down. And I wouldn't worry about this 5,000 if you are low. Now, certainly, if you're in the 30 to 50 range, technically the lab is going to tell you that you're not low. So in that case, you don't necessarily have to take 5,000. You could take, if you're already taking something, you could take 2,000. Certainly if you're under 30, you're going to want to take 5,000. And especially with everything that's going on now, the faster you get your vitamin D levels to an optimal level of this level, 50 to 75 or so, the better you're off you're going to be. So I wouldn't fear 5,000 IUs per day, but you can, again, as I said, everything, you should probably talk to your doctor about it, but get your level checked and see how it goes. One study showed 1,000 IUs per day helped people reach a level 33, which is sort of, what the lab is going to tell you is sort of, a normal level. And 2,000 IUs helped nearly everyone reach about 33 also. But you don't want 33, you want it to be higher. So if you have a 2,000 IU supplement, then take two a day, wait a couple months, and then recheck it. So that is vitamin D. Now I mentioned vitamin D and vitamin K, and remember I mentioned zinc and magnesium and zinc and copper. All of these things interact in so many different ways. So vitamin D is important because it interacts with vitamin K. But before I mention that, we all want to get vitamin D into our systems because it optimizes our immune system. And there have been several studies to show that the people who did very poorly with COVID showed that they had low levels of vitamin D. So in addition to the zinc that I have mentioned almost every week, I do recommend everyone to take. Also, you want to make sure that your vitamin D level is optimal during COVID. That's very, 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 very important. So get your level checked. If you're not taking any, and you're somehow worried about taking too much, then fine, take 2,000. But I highly recommend everyone to get a blood. You really need to know what your vitamin D level is. It's critical that you do that. So getting back to these interactions between all of these nutrients in the body, you have magnesium and zinc and copper, and you also have vitamin D and vitamin K. There's so many interactions. So vitamin D basically takes the calcium, gets it into your bloodstream, but vitamin K really puts it where it's supposed to go. So, vitamin K is going to direct it into your bones. That's where you want it. You don't want it elsewhere. You don't want it in your blood vessels, in your heart, in your coronary arteries. You don't want these things to have calcium. And if your vitamin K levels are all out of whack, then your vitamin D, which is optimizing your system, optimizing your calcium levels, is not optimizing them to get where they're supposed to be. And so it's very important for you to make sure you're getting vitamin K as well, especially vitamin K2. But vitamin K1 is found in leafy green vegetables, and vitamin K2 is found in, you want a supplement, you want a multivitamin that has a vitamin K2 in it. You don't need to take vitamin K by itself, but there's something called menaquinone. I spoke about this in one of the other episodes. You want to make sure you're getting a little bit of vitamin K2. Of course, I always mention that there is a fermented dish from Japan called natto, which has the highest levels of vitamin K2. And there's certain aged cheeses that you actually don't need to eat all that much to get a decent amount of K2. But honestly, going crazy with lots of cheeses is probably not a good idea. So you probably want to have a multivitamin that has a little bit of vitamin K2. And of course, you want to make sure that you're getting a lot of leafy greens to get plain vitamin K, vitamin K1 as well. So that is tonight's class. I hope, what my goal here, as always, is for you to become your own authority in health, which means that right now, I would hope, and of course, you're going to get a recording of this and it'll be on the YouTube channel, that you have a plan here for magnesium. Are you going to increase, are you going to get a supplement, or are you going to take a bath at night, or are you going to add foods that have magnesium that we spoke about, leafy greens, nuts and seeds, that sort of thing. How about omega-3? We know we can't eat a ton of we can't eat all the fish in the world because it has, in addition to mercury, there's a new issue with these microplastics that are in the fish. It's a crazy world. So are you getting enough? Do you need to take a supplement? Now you know what you need to do and roughly how much to do it. How about iodine? So we spoke about that. We want to make sure that we get all the iodine tests, and you want to make sure that you're getting iodine in your diet, and maybe having, and I recommend having it in a multivitamin. And then the D that we've spoken about, so important, especially these days. Get your blood test. Don't be scared of ordering your own blood test. Get it, and then decide to supplement properly. And you can always reach out to me and let me know. Marcia's asking if there are any forms of magnesium that should be avoided. Magnesium oxide, which is often found in like, you know, as a prescription, or just like this found in pharmacies as like the medicinal form. Not that it should be avoided, but you don't absorb all that much from magnesium oxide. But the other forms, a mixed set of forms, like malate or glycinate, are going to be totally fine. There's a magnesium for the brain specifically called magnesium threonate that is also something, you know, that you can add to the mix for better brain health. But you want a mix of magnesiums. Probably some of the mixes do have a little bit of magnesium oxide. So okay, so, and Sheila's asking a very good question that I meant to bring up that I didn't. So what about cod liver oil? So cod liver oil has a decent amount of vitamin D. I think I actually had it in here and I just maybe went over. And I'm so glad you asked that. Yeah. So cod liver oil has a good amount of, you know, of vitamin D in it. The problem with cod liver oil is that it also has a lot of vitamin A in it. And the ratio of A to D, sometimes you can get too much vitamin A from cod liver oil. And therefore, most authorities who understand the interplay between all of these nutrients much better than I do are not recommending cod liver oil much anymore because of the unreliable amount of vitamin A from one batch to another. And vitamin A can actually be very dangerous. It can be harmful to your health, essentially. But Sheila's saying she took it as a young child in South Philadelphia. And back then, yes, I mean, think about how beneficial that would be, especially if we didn't understand all the details about vitamins to be able to get those fat-soluble vitamins. But now we know a little bit more and we can fine-tune things a lot more. And unfortunately, because of the vitamin A, I don't recommend that too much. So yeah, so I'm so glad you mentioned that, Sheila. Thank you for asking that. I meant to talk about that tonight. So really appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, well, thank you everyone for your attendance. And I do always appreciate everyone who is showing up. Thank you, Grant, Irene, Jean Victor, Louis, Marcia, Pat, Paula, Sharon, Sheila, Tricia, and a bunch of others. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you next week. I believe next week we're speaking about, I don't remember what we're speaking about next week, but it's either, I don't remember what we're speaking about next week, sorry, but you'll get an email. And I look forward to seeing you for episode number 37. So everyone go out, get your zinc, get your vitamin D so that you can stay healthy during this crisis. And again, look forward to seeing everyone next week.